All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's class on sketching a crouching figure. This is technically a one-off class, but it's also a bit of a part one in a three-part class. The way that I organized it, I wanted it to kind of stand alone, but then it's also going to be leading into what we're doing next week, which is adding value to a crouching figure. So we'll be using the same drawing and adding to that. And then the following week, it will be a premium class, and we'll be adding watercolor, monochrome watercolor to this drawing. So it's a bit of a three-parter here, but technically standalone if you're just joining us for this one. I'm going to switch to my tabletop view and go ahead and go over supplies, and then we'll dive right in. Okay, so since we are going to be ending up with something like this, I don't actually have the original of what this drawing will started out as, what we're going to end with the class today. So I'm going to show you a picture of the drawing that was advertised with the class tonight. So we're going to end up with hopefully something like this, depending on where you are in your drawing journey. So results may vary depending on how quickly you draw and your ability to keep up with what I'm doing and render things. So, always like to manage expectations at the end of classes. And then at the end of next week's class, we'll be adding value to it. So if we don't quite make it to what this one looked like, then next week we'll keep adding to it, and then we'll get that value on there, and then we'll add the watercolor in the premium class, and we'll end up with something like this. Okay, so the supply list tonight went ahead and listed all of the supplies, but and I have to say, with all the commotion before the class started, I did not double check which pencils I had put on the supply list. So I'm going to say it was either, both of which are sold at Michael's, it was either the Faber-Castell 6-piece set, or it was the Staedtler 12-piece set pencils. So either one of those will work for what we're doing tonight. And I've got them both on my desk, and I'll just grab one because they both work. And then I've got a synthetic eraser here. And then I've got the Strathmore watercolor sketchbook, which one handy tip for if you're trying to make this lay flat on your desk and it's not doing that, you can use a little clip like this, a binder clip or a metal clip like that. Works really great. You're also maybe going to want some scratch paper. I'm going to probably work on sketchbook paper tonight, just because I want to draw darker than I want you to draw in the watercolor sketchbook. I want you to use very light pencils, and I'll get to that when we get started. But basically, I'm going to be drawing in my sketchbook, and then when we get to the part where we're adding watercolor, I'll just draw it again in this watercolor sketchbook. And yeah, just because I'm going to have to draw darker on screen for my lines to show up, but I want you to draw nice and light. So if you want to go ahead and draw it in this watercolor sketchbook so that you'll be ready to add watercolor in that premium class, please do. And if you want to just draw it in a regular sketchbook or on some scratch paper, that's fine as well. Don't forget to tag your work with those hashtags, Make It With Michaels or Michaels Classes. If you share your work online, you can follow me on Instagram at Adrienne Hodge Art. I'm also on Facebook, Adrienne Hodge Fine Art. And here's a few of my business cards I'm always flashing on screen. Okay, so we're gonna just dive in and get started here with sketching this crouching figure. Oh, and I also should add, in the supply list, you also got these 3 reference images. So we have this black and white version of our model Demetrius, who we drew in last week's class, which was on basic body proportions. If you missed that class, you can find it on YouTube by searching drawing or sketching basic body proportions. And we've also had a number of classes on sketching body proportions with the wooden mannequin from Michaels. And also last year we had a number of classes on sketching the figure using another set of photos that I collected at my studio doing a photo shoot with another model named Sion. And then I recently had a photo shoot with this model, Demetrius. And so we're going to be working from those photographs for some time as we progress through this series. I'll be sprinkling in more figure drawing classes using photos that I collected in this photo shoot. So I've got a black and white version of it. I've got the original version with the full color and natural light, and that's just to help you see the values better. And then also I've got the inverted version of the photo, and again that's to help you see those values. And we're going to definitely be using all three of these, or probably mainly this one, and we'll probably use all three of them, but this one's going to be very helpful throughout the class this week and next week with the value and with the proportions, because it's all about the light, y'all. Light really informs so much of what we're doing when we're drawing, and with drawing people and bodies, it can be very challenging. And so I really lean on the light to help me so much. And I suggest that you make that your tool in your toolbox as well, because it's very helpful. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started if there aren't any questions. I saw a few questions in the chat that I feel like I might want to address popping up. I will not be going through the anatomy, step by step, like the basics of anatomy, because we've had so many classes so far on basic body proportions. So we'll just be building on what we've covered in other classes in regards to sketching this figure. But I've got a lot of tips and tricks if you're new to sketching a figure that can help. Okay, so I'm going to clear some of this off my desk and get to my blank sketchbook paper. And then this is where I'm going to talk about pencils again. So the number one question that gets asked in almost every single one of these classes is, what pencil am I using? I am a little bound by the limitations of Zoom in regards to what pencil I can use on screen. I would prefer to always start out with a nice light pencil. Like from this set, it would be the HB would be the lightest. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that I told y'all to have this set because it's got a 2H and an H. I want you to draw with an H pencil as we're finding all of these shapes and forms, and so that you can erase your lines. But I'm going to use a B or a 2B so that my lines can be a little darker and show up on screen a little better. And if you don't know about the letters and the numbers on the pencils, the very first class that we had in this series that I taught for Michaels in July 2021, so 2 years ago, was Intro to Graphite and Drawing Forms. And that's probably the most referenced class, especially with folks who are just joining us and don't know about the numbers and letters on the pencils. That will help you distinguish that and understand, and also draw tips for sketching nice and lightly. So if you're using a darker pencil along with me, just know that you're going to have a harder time erasing. So hopefully your skills are a little more intermediate or advanced if you're drawing with a dark pencil when you're trying to sketch a complicated figure like this. And a B pencil is going to make a darker line that's going to be more challenging to erase, unless you're drawing nice on the surface of the paper with the side of your pencil, like we've talked about numerous times. It will be easier to erase that way. All right, I feel like I'm talking too long about pencils here. Okay, so, oh, I see somebody saying they got a tornado warning siren and need to go. That's what was happening with our moderator. So sorry, y'all take care in the Chicago area. That is, when I saw someone from Chicago, I thought, oh no, hopefully you're not in a tornado warning zone right now. Okay, so I'm gonna have the reference image off screen, but you should have it there. And if you have a printout of it, that could be really helpful because you can draw directly on the photo. But then the digital version is really helpful because we can really zoom in on things. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is if you've got the printout version of it, what I want you to do is take your pencil and just draw a box around the figure and try to make your box go right in line with Demetrius's shoulder, and then keep it nice. So on the right side, it's going to be a straight line that corners at the top of the head or the back of the bun here on his hair, and then comes down and creates a corner and goes down, hits the shoulder, and then it's going to corner over here. It's going to hit the line at the tips of the fingers, and it's going to corner again, and it's going to hit the knee. And try to make those lines as straight as possible as you're drawing directly on the photograph. Okay, and then on our paper, we're going to start out with drawing that box. And this will be erased later, so this is why I want you to draw nice and light. Let me make sure I'm getting this box that I'm drawing within the zoom frame, because that would be silly to draw it where it's going out of the zoom frame and have to scoot my drawing around. Okay, let me go a little lower. All right, so we're going to use the negative space around our model here to help us as we go. Otherwise, this might take more than an hour to get right. And this is a device that I use a lot. It's a bit of a grid, but it's not a full-on grid. I mean, we could grid this photograph. We've had classes on using a grid, although I can't recall off the top of my head if those were. I think that was a premium class. So anyway. But yeah, a grid is very helpful, and we are just kind of creating a bit of a grid here because we're going to use that negative space that we see in the box to check ourselves and see if we're getting things in the right place. Okay, so I'm imagining that I've drawn this box, and so within that box, I'm going to start to draw the general shapes of the figure here, and we're not getting specific yet. So we're starting with these shapes that would create a wooden mannequin. So for the head, we're doing a big oval or an egg shape. For the torso and the shoulders and everything, we're doing kind of an upside down rounded hexagonal shape. We're doing a hexagonal, well, we can't really see the hips as they look here on the figure, but you get the idea. We're doing circles for the main joints. We're doing big kind of disc-like shapes for the hands and the feet. We're going very general here. If you feel like you want to jump ahead and start getting specific, try to resist, because we want to get all these proportions accurate, and it might take a few tries. All right, so for the crown of the head, I like to start with a circle, but the crown of the head is actually not hitting the top of my box. The crown of the head is just below the top of my box here. And if my lines are kind of light, don't worry, I'll get them darker as I go. Okay, so I'm gonna start with a circle, and then I can maybe go ahead and just put that other half circle there for the hair that's sticking out. Okay, and then we'll get a little half oval shape coming off the bottom of that for the rest of the head. And again, we're not worrying about if the jawline is wide enough or any of that stuff yet. We're just getting the essential form of the figure here to be laid out. Okay, so as we start to draw the circles for the shoulders, we need to look at the relationship between the head and the shoulders. Normally the shoulders are down below the head, right? But since this figure is crouching in such a way that the shoulders are hunched up right here, we've got the shoulders very much in line with the bottom, almost the bottom of the earlobes, and almost in line with the eyes. So we're going to go ahead and just do a bit of a vertical and a horizontal axis on the head to find where our eye line is to help us along right here. So I'll do something like that. There is just the tiniest bit of a well, not the tiniest bit, a little more than the tiniest bit of a 3/4 view, as we can see the side of the face here more than that side of the face. So we want to have that vertical axis kind of off to the right a little bit so that there's more space over here. We also want a curved line on the vertical axis and a curved line on the horizontal axis because of the roundness of the head. It's not flat, so we don't want flat lines. Okay, so now that we can see whereabouts the eye line is about halfway down on the head. And if you don't know about facial proportions, you can check out any of the classes on facial proportions. I did a class a few months back that was on both child and adult facial proportions using photographs of the head of adults and children. So I'm not going to go over all that. All right, so we want these shoulders below the eye line. So we got the eye line right there. And then we also want this shoulder to hit the box, right? So this is why we don't want to commit to anything yet, because as I get the shoulder, which I'm going to go ahead and, since kind of the biceps coming forward right there, I'm going to get a nice big circle. And then already I am seeing that maybe I need to scooch the head over a little bit. So this is why, I just stabbed myself with my pencil. Who knew drawing could be so dangerous, y'all? I really got myself. It's so silly. All right, let me do that again real quick. So I want that to come over. Maybe I'll go ahead and put the shoulders in there first before drawing too much of that head. Oh, hang on. I think we just need the head to be bigger. Maybe I'll just need my box to come in on the other side. Maybe I drew my box too wide because I'm like, that knee needs to go way over there. I think the last time I drew the box, I don't know what I did, but it came out a lot easier. I may be rushing a little bit here because we started late and all the activity. All right, so let's get that head in there. We need that 3/4 view. We need the, okay, and then we need this shoulder to come up here with the edge of the box. And then this shoulder over here, we need the roundness of that shoulders to be nice and broad and up there by the ears, just below the eye line. Okay, so something like that, but we may have to adjust all of this. So we're not getting too attached to anything yet. Okay. And then we'll look at the relationship of the shoulder to the elbow joint and where that is in relationship to the negative space. And I see that it should be somewhere around here, but I may need to adjust that. And then the other elbow is about in line with that. So I should be able to draw a line from the elbows and touch each other. They're on a bit of a diagonal, but they are fairly close to each other. I just remembered I was going to have us warm up with, if you caught last week's class, we kind of ended the class with what I wanted to start with this week, which was a little blind contour to warm up Maybe if I keep struggling, I'll go back and do my warm up. All right, so we've got the head, and then the shoulders, and then the elbows. Okay. Now let's look at the relationship of that knee. And this is where I said I probably need to make the side of my box come in more, because that knee is nice and big and sticking out over here, but it doesn't quite go all the way to the edge of that box that I drew. So I'm going to bring my box in. And the only reason for the box is just to use the negative space, because I can look at, you know, like let's scroll over to this photograph. Like it's easier to see, I feel like, the negative space that's created right here. We've got this kind of V shape right here between the knee and the shoulder, and we can see like this lines. For some reason, it's just easier to spot these shapes when you use a photograph like this. So if I go to my drawing, do I have a line that connects right there on a diagonal? And I do. Okay, and like I can check right here, if I were to have a line drawn right here of this box, the shoulder doesn't quite come in line to the same point as the knee, but you can see the negative space shape that is created right here. It's kind of like another V shape. So it's like that. So you can almost just draw the negative space to help guide yourself around. And we can, even though we jumped ahead to this, we can go back and do that warm up again in just a minute before we start getting more specific here. Okay, so I drew this big circle for the knee. Let's see what the relationship is between the two knees. So the knees are also on a diagonal right here from each other. There's this knee and there's this knee. We could think about a string connecting those two knees. You could also look at the line at the top of the leg and see where that falls on this leg right here. And that is just so much easier, folks, than trying to draw the foreshortening of this leg, because this leg is extremely foreshortened. And that means the information is missing, and our brains want to fill in those blanks. Like we know there's a whole leg right here, that there's this really, you know, big distance happening between the thigh and the knee, or larger than it appears right there. And then the entire calf is almost invisible. We can see a bit of it right there, but it's mostly in shadow. So there's this urge to draw the information that is not visible. It's like if our finger is pointed towards us, all I can see is the tip of the finger. There's all this information that I know is there, but it's not visible to me right now. So you just want to draw what's visible to you. And the easiest way to do that is to look at these relationships between these shapes and not even, you know, try to break your brain and just go for it. I say use everything you got. Okay, so we can see where that line lines up. We can also see where things line up over here. So like this leg, where does this line up in relationship to this leg? And it doesn't really connect. There's not a perfectly straight diagonal line that would go from like this leg. It's actually more in line with the hand right here. So, but we know that our hand is going to come to the bottom of this box here. So we can go ahead and just, let's draw like a little triangle right here for the hand. And then we'll double check ourselves in just a second to see if these things match up. And then again, let's look at where the toes of this foot are in relationship to this hand. We've got this very helpful shadow being cast across right here from the hand to the toe. And so we can go ahead and draw our little toe shape and just see if we can get this leg line to be like, let's connect the wrist joint right here to the leg. So the wrist joint is right about here. And then we need that to connect to our hand in a bit. Looking pretty good on my end so far. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Okay, so hopefully all your circles are lining up in the right spot. So try not to even think about this as a figure yet. Draw directly onto your photograph if you have to. Draw these circles directly onto the photograph and then draw a line from your circles of the joints and see where those things line up. The elbows are on the same plane, so they should connect. The wrists are on the same plane, so see where those connect and line up with each other. And speaking of, we haven't put this other hand in there yet, so let's see where the wrist is in relationship to Demetrius's arms. So the wrist is really in line with the armpit right here. So let's say right about here under the shoulder joint and the bicep is the armpit. And then we want the circle for the wrist right about here. And then we're going to need enough space for that hand. So just judging by that distance, I think it needs to come down a little bit. You can also use the information that's visible on the chest to help with that. So let's maybe go ahead and draw the nipple line in there for ourselves a little bit. And like you can see the tops of the shorts. I can see it in the photograph in front of me. It's not showing up on the Zoom, and that one's kind of washed out, but hopefully you can see those shadows there and where that line is. Okay, and then as far as the elbows go, I kind of skipped over the hand again. Let's see, the wrist I say is right about there. I'm gonna do just like a cowbell shape for the hand right now. I'm gonna do something like that. Maybe go ahead and put the thumb in there, but have that shape. Okay. All right, so here's where I'm thinking my elbow is not in the right spot because I'm looking at the line of those shorts and noticing that they need to go behind the circle of the elbow joint. So maybe my elbow joints need to come down a little bit. Maybe right about there. And then I can draw the line of the shorts underneath them. Okay, let's look at the arm and see where this line needs to go. Right about there, and it needs to go around the elbow joint. It kind of hugs. That crease goes right there. And then right here, we're looking at this shape. And I like to call things something other than what they are. So like saying, let's draw the forearm just sounds so daunting. But if I say, hey, let's draw this turkey leg right here, then it's like, okay, turkey leg, done, got a turkey leg. I don't know why it's easier to call it something other than what it is, but it sure does help. All right, so same thing over here. Call it whatever you got to call it to make it easier to draw. We can look at, let's say, like the letter P right here, like a big, no, I don't know. I'm drawing this shape right here and I want to connect it. I need that elbow to be in line with that elbow. Whoa, that's really not, that's going to be too long. Okay, let's see where I went wrong. I think my turkey leg is too long, y'all. All right, maybe I need more general shapes before I start connecting things. Let me go ahead and just get the rest of this mapped out. Like what really helped me the last time I drew this was looking, even though we're not getting to the value yet, was looking at the value shapes. So once I started looking at these shapes of shadows and breaking those down into smaller shapes, it helped me to map it out even more. And also, yeah, looking at like creating circles where maybe there's not necessarily a joint, but there's still a roundness that helped me around. So I put 2 circles right here for the elbow, and that's what really helped. Is looking at the little circle that's created by the value there. And then the big circle as well. So that's where like the arm is just creased in half right there, and it creates a little circle. And then the circle for the elbow underneath that. And that was really helpful. And then, yeah, this elbow was slightly above because we had a diagonal line that wasn't quite perfectly lined up right there. Okay, and then I went ahead and looked at like this shape right here on the calf to help guide me. And then this shape right here. So I'm really just breaking everything down into shapes. And then once I get all these shapes stacked on top of each other, I can fill in the empty spaces with the shapes of the body parts. Okay, so the foot creates a shape like that. And then the arm really eclipses the foot. And then we can look at like this line right here from the armpit all the way down to the hand and see if we can get that little swoopy action to happen. All right, and remember, all we're trying to do tonight is just get these proportions all lined up. So we're in a pretty good spot for having 20 minutes left right here because we've got quite a bit mapped out. So I could maybe slow it down and we could do the blind contour to help us a little bit. Okay, so this was not my best pacing at the moment here to be like, let's go back to the warm up after going this far into it. But if you're struggling, this is very helpful. And we did this at the end of last week's class to kind of jump ahead since we finished a little early last week. Okay, so let's take our photograph for a second. And we're going to just do a blind contour. So that's where we don't look at the paper, we're only going to look at our subject. So we're only going to look at the photograph, and I'm going to put my photograph kind of off to the side over here. And without switching to my forward facing view, you can take my word for it. My body is pointed away from my paper so that I'm only looking at the photograph of Demetrius. And you can do this with the black and white, the full color, or the negative space one, whichever one you think is helpful. And I want you to focus on these shapes that we've been drawing. So maybe it is kind of nice that we're doing it at this point in the drawing because we've really familiarized ourselves with these shapes. Okay, so, but I'm going to not pick up my pencil as much as I can help it. If you do pick up your pencil, it's not the end of the world, but the more you keep it one continuous line, the easier it will be to guide yourself around. Okay, so I drew the head without looking at my paper. Now I drew the shoulder. Now I've got that line from the shoulder, and it does not matter what this looks like when we're done. So it doesn't matter that the line of the shoulder is going through the head. This is not about what this drawing looks like. Doing a blind contour is all about the process of creating a conversation between your eyes and your drawing hand. So what the outcome of this is inconsequential, because what I'm doing right now is practicing looking and creating a muscle memory. So I got the elbows, and let me go ahead and draw that line from the elbow to the other elbow. And it might not be lining up. It doesn't matter. This is just about looking and the muscle memory. Okay, so I went ahead and drew that shape of the shorts in there. And then now I need this bottom knee. And then let me draw a line over here to where I think the other knee is. And draw that other big circle for the knee. Do that circle for the calf. All those things that we were talking about. I'll get the shape of the foot. I'll get that toe. I'll get that line from the foot to the hand. I'll get my triangle for the hand. I'm going to do a big swoopy line back up here to the shoulder. I feel like that's everything. Okay, wow, that's really great. I'm really proud of that because I can see it. I can see the shape of that figure in there, like the foot and the stuff kind of got all squished up here in it, but I'm really getting the muscle memory down of where those shapes are in relationship to each other. Okay, I'm gonna do one more up here at the top of the page. And this time I'm gonna go to the photograph with the light, and we'll kind of get a head start on what we're doing in next week's class. This time I want you to just draw the shapes of the light and the dark. So I'm gonna start with the shape of the light, which is what's showing up as white in this image is actually the dark shapes. So I've got the shape of the hair, shape of the eyebrows, shape of the eyes, that mustache, shadow on the side of the neck to the shoulders. I'll go ahead and put the shoulders in there, even though they're the opposite light shapes I'm looking at. And then we've got this big blob. I'm probably going into my other drawing. The hand, the elbow, the knee, shape of the other hand. I forgot, I was looking at the light. Okay, you got the light on the arm, the light on the knee. Oh, I got this big light shape, this big shadow that's falling across the leg from the arm, and then the foot, and I got those shadows in there. All right, that one's a little crazy, but it doesn't matter. It's all about the muscle memory. So if you're struggling with getting anything to line up, do that lots of times. Do that every time you're struggling. And that is not just a teacher telling a student to do something and it's pointless and I wouldn't do it myself. I do that all the time. I honestly wanted to do that for myself right now, as much as I wanted to do it for all of you. Okay, so back to getting these proportions lined up. That's our only objective tonight. That's why I broke this down, so there's no rush. Just slow it down, Adrian. Okay, so shoulders look good. The wrist looks good. This elbow, I think, the more I look at it, I think it needs to go back up again, because the distance, the shape of this arm that's visible to me is not that much. I'm going to go ahead and even draw another circle for this muscle right here of the bicep. Okay, and then I can do a little turkey leg and my circle for where the skin is creased right there, and then my other little circle for the elbow where it's resting. Okay. Yeah, it's deceptive. I feel like the shorts should be taking up more space, but the more I look at it, they do not take up that much space because of the way he's crouching. They're kind of pulled up there. All right. And then, yeah, we haven't even talked about this foreshortened leg over here. If you're struggling with this leg, really just draw the shapes here. So like there's this big round shape right here. You can do like circles on top of circles on top of circles, whatever you got to do. And then also, you know, use your negative space. So we had that V shape over here at the side. The side of our box doesn't quite hit that other leg, or that leg. So that looks good. Then you got this little meteor part right here. Okay, and then there's a very heavy shadow. So it's kind of hard to see where the crotch really is. And it goes right there. And then there's a pretty big shadow. So you can get like the line of the shorts. And then maybe just focus on the arm, the placement of the arm. I think the last time I drew it, I really struggled with getting all of this down here to line up. And that was why I ended up drawing the box, because I realized how this hand can create a little corner with the knee over here. And then I was like, oh, if I use the negative space, then I can really see what's going on there. So that's why I think that box is so helpful, because I can see like, does this corner, can I get a straight 90-degree angle from the line of where the knee is down to where the hand is. So if you can get that to be a straight-ish line. I just realized I'm not really, it doesn't look very straight on the zoom. It looks straight in front of me. We're going to erase it when we're done. It's really just a helpful device there. So apologies if it doesn't look totally straight to you. It looks straight enough to me. All right, and then again, the negative space of the triangle that I'm seeing right here between the foot and the hand. So we've kind of got a little hourglass shape, or like some sort of amplituhedron shape happening right here, where those, see the hourglass, where those are lining up. And if this seems like a bonkers method to use, I just think it's really great because we don't have to know everything about anatomy. Somebody asked at the beginning of the class, are we going to talk about all the anatomy? And it's like, I mean, yes and no. We're really using the shapes. We're drawing the human form the same way I would advise that we draw a still life. And every time I teach these classes, I always try to think of ways to break things down in a way that makes something that's really intimidating to draw less intimidating. And I think by doing it this way, it takes the intimidation away, because all we have to know how to draw in order to draw this figure is circles and lines, right? All we're doing right now is creating a connect the dots for ourselves. Okay, so we want this to line up in a way that this foot, you know, is curved in and we only see this part of the foot. So again, I'm looking at the negative space in relationship to the side of that box. and also how much of the ankle and the foot are visible. Let's see if we can get, like, if we drew a straight line from here, would it hit the foot? And it would. If we drew a straight line from where the calf sticks out on this side, we could hit the edge of the foot. So we need the calf to stick out a little bit right here. Let's draw this little circle for the knee, how the kneecap has like 3 little circles I'm seeing. A little constellation knee. Okay, so there's the 3 circles that I'm seeing on the knee. Oops. And then below that circle, we've got this shape sticking out right here. We want to draw a straight line, a diagonal line, and we want to hit the side of the foot. And then we also want that little curve to happen right there. So let's just draw the foot and just see what happens. Let's draw the shape of a foot. And we can go ahead and put that toe on there. All right. So our straight line needs to hit like the pinky toes. But that doesn't mean that the rest of the toes don't come forward a little bit. So pinky toe right there. The rest of the foot comes forward, and then we got the big toe right there. Okay, so we want something like that. And then now let's double check it against the hand. We got that negative space there, and we've got that shadow. I think that's looking pretty good. All right, now for these hands. All right, let's look at the little circles for the knuckles. We'll go ahead and draw those in there. And then there's another circle for the knuckle of the thumb. And we can really only see 3 fingers for the most part, which I kind of got confused when I'll just point this little mistake out when I was adding the watercolor. I had this right in my drawing, but for some reason when I was painting it, I like added an extra little finger crease down there. But I don't think it's too obvious. But I definitely got a little confused about how much of that finger was visible there. But you can see when I first drew it, I didn't have that. It like tucks under right there. So it's really just 3 fingers that are visible, but then I kind of forced that third one to be visible. All right, so let's go back to the image. So yeah, that knuckle, it does stick out right there. We could maybe go ahead and draw that 4th little knuckle right there, but then it goes underneath. Okay, but let's keep it at just a triangle for now, because I still haven't finished this arm. I might need to move that again. Okay, so we got this big shadow, this shape coming across the side of the leg. We've got that big shadow right there. And remember, we're not adding the value yet. We're going to do that next week. All we're doing right now is lining up. We're getting our wooden mannequin lined up in a crouching form. Okay, let's get that wrist in there. Something's going wonky as I try to line this arm up with all these circles so far. All right, so we got the straight line from the armpit, this kind of swoopy line. It's not straight, it's swoopy. So swoopy line. We need the elbow to be slightly above at a diagonal, right about there. And then this little back of the elbow sticks out right about here. And then that's where the swoop comes in. And then we got the other wrist. Okay, so we're looking for something like that, but that still looks wonky to me. I should also mention that the reason why my other example looks like this is going back to what I was talking about at the very beginning of the class. Drawing all these lines super dark on Zoom really puts me at a disadvantage for you guys, but if you're using an H pencil and you're drawing nice and light, all of these mistake lines, these lines that are not where I intend for them to go at first, when you're drawing so light, like I had those in this drawing, I had tons of those, but you can't see them because I drew them so light that I just erased them when I was done. I just kept working until I got everything lined up where I needed it. And then I erased my light lines and then I drew the darker lines. It's definitely, you know, a much wonkier process when I'm having to draw dark on Zoom, but that's just the nature of teaching on Zoom, and I appreciate y'all bearing with me. All right, well, we're almost at the end of the class, and I feel like we have done everything except for, so yeah, this may need to be adjusted just a little bit before next week when we start adding the value, but I think that's pretty close. The one thing we have not added that was in the, oh, we didn't do this hand. We could go ahead and put those knuckles on that hand. And then find where the thumb is. But yeah, we haven't put any of the shapes of the head in there yet. So I may just go ahead and save that for next week because that feels more connected to the value anyway. What's going to really help me with drawing the proportions of the head here is going to be looking at these shadows on the side of the face and in the collarbone area and all that. That's going to really inform where I put the facial features. So we'll just kind of leave it at the vertical and horizontal axis for the head there. And if you've got all that lined up, then you should be able to erase all these lines that we don't need. And if you were drawing nice and light with that H pencil, it should be really easy to erase all these kind of robot shapes that we've created that resemble more of a wooden mannequin right now so that we can add the value on top of it. And if you need to draw it a few times to get it nice and light and to get everything lined up the way that you need it, then by all means do that. Do more blind contours. Thanks for sticking with me through this process. I know it's a little tricky drawing something. It's just so tricky drawing with a dark pencil, doing something that I would never in a million years draw this dark when I'm going general to specific. I would always use that H pencil and keep everything nice and light until I got those things lined up where I want them. I wish I was one of those magical people that drew proportions perfectly the first time, but it's a sketching process that I've got to make my way through to get to a result that looks like this. Okay, so next week we will keep building on all of these shapes to add all of the value, and I think the value is immensely helpful. It's kind of hard to not put it in there too much in this early phase that we were in because it really helps to guide me around and double check my proportions. But I just knew that with a crouching figure like this, we would probably need a full hour to explain how to line all those things up. All right, so that'll be next week's class, is getting the value and tweaking any proportions that were off in regards to this week before next week. And then the following Wednesday, we'll be using the watercolor to add value in, and I'll sketch it again in my watercolor sketchbook before that. Before we go, if we've got at least 1 minute, since we started a little late, I'd love to see some of your sketches so far. If anybody wants to hold up their drawings, and Carrie could spotlight you really quick. Just a few folks if we could. Oh yes, look at that. And I love those blind contours. That is wonderful. Oh yeah, you got the knee and the shoulders. And that's really great start. All right. All right, yes. So I just need to keep working to line those things up. Maybe draw the box again, but touching those shoulders and kneecaps and stuff. Very nice. Thank you for sharing. I see a couple others that are held up, like Barbara, Teresa, Peyton. I think we're just trying to find you all to spotlight you. All right, yeah. That one shoulder needs to come up on the other side so that it hunches as much as the one. Oh, that leg is looking really great though. All right, yes, good start. When I see all these great examples, I know I'm doing my job. All right, the face is looking good so far. Those shoulders definitely need to be more hunched and rounded up there, but that definitely, like, you've got the gesture of the hand to the chin. Right, I see another one that's held up. It's Veronica, but we're not spotlighting. Oh yes, that's looking, the knee to the arm ratio, all that is looking really strong. Just overall, there's a few things that need to be tweaked, but you've just got the stature, like the statuesque form. It's coming together really nicely there. That one too, that one really just jumps out at me. I think maybe things need to come in more, like from left to right. I think it got a little stretched in the middle on the horizontal. I think maybe if your box came in a little more. Very nice. Really awesome job, everyone. Ooh, I see a beautiful page of notes. That Morna. I love a page of notes. Can we spotlight Morna? Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. It's so satisfying. I love how you labeled it all like that. So helpful. And when I'm drawing a model in a life drawing class, I do the same thing, y'all. I like hold up my pencil to them and see where does like their kneecap line up with their elbow, you know, like I would do the same thing even if it wasn't a photograph. I try to find those lines. Very nice. Oh yes, that's very strong. Oh, I'm so impressed. Thank you, Peyton. Wow. Really wonderful work, everyone. Okay, I don't want to go too far into the next hour. Thank you all so much. I'll see you next week and we'll add value. Have a great night.